Rome was the greatest state of antiquity, ruler of the Mediterranean Sea and mistress of the world. At the beginning of the 4th century, the Roman Empire controlled lands from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Mesopotamia, had a population of over 60 million people and an army of over 500,000 soldiers. At its peak, its economy accounted for 30% of the world's total, and its capital had a population of up to 1 million. But slowly and inevitably, this enormous machine began to collapse. Its downfall was not sudden. It was a long, painful process that stretched over decades. Some contemporaries saw it as divine punishment, others as the consequences of human error. We will trace step by step, in the correct chronological order, how this collapse happened. In the middle of the 3rd century, global cooling began. The peoples living northeast of Rome suffered from crop failures and climatic anomalies. In search of better conditions, they began to move south, putting pressure on the Roman borders. In 330, Emperor Constantine moved the capital from Rome to Constantinople. By this time, the western part of the empire was already much poorer than the eastern part. In 395, after the death of Emperor Theodosius, the empire was divided into 2 parts. The eastern part, taking advantage of its geographical position, continued to prosper, while the western part faced a number of threats from economic decline and demography to barbarian invasions. By the end of the 4th century, the western part of the empire had about 150 to 200,000 soldiers, including Confederate barbarians. By this time, the Roman army had lost much of its quality. The classical Roman legions had been replaced by small units to guard the frontiers, not designed for major battles. Confederate barbarians could make up to 30%, which reduced the discipline and organization of the troops. In addition, as early as the 4th century, troops experienced poor supply, inadequate training, and regular delays in salaries. This sometimes led to entire units deserting, leaving the frontier unprotected. In 354, the Huns invaded Eastern Europe and destroyed the Ostrogothic kingdom, forcing the Visigoths to flee to the Roman borders. In 376, Emperor Valens agreed to let the Visigoths into the empire in exchange for military service. However, due to corruption and the arbitrariness of Roman officials, the Visigoths rebelled against the Romans and started a war. Emperor Valens advanced with his troops to suppress the rebellion, but at the Battle of Adrianople, the Romans were defeated and the emperor was killed. The Visigoths plundered Illyria for several years until the new emperor, Theodosius, concluded a peace treaty granting land and high offices to the barbarian leaders. For the first time, a barbarian tribe did not simply invade but settled within the empire. For the other barbarians, this served as a sign that the empire was not so strong. The era of the Great Migration began, which completely changed the map of Europe. After the death of Theodosius, the new leader of the Visigoths, Alaric, rebelled against the Romans, besieged Constantinople, but having failed, went to plunder Greece. In 397, Flavius Stilichon, probably the last great general of Rome, ruling at that time the western part of the empire instead of the minor honoris, defeated the Visigoths. But by 400 Alaric gathered a new army and advanced into Italy, but was stopped by Stilichon's forces in the north and retreated. To defend Italy from the barbarians, Stilichon had to withdraw troops from the Rhine, Britannia, and Spain. Taking advantage of this, the Vandals, Alans, and Suevians crossed the Rhine and invaded Gaul, and by 409 had penetrated into Spain. Taking advantage of Stilicho's death in the course of internal political intrigues, Alaricus was able to capture Rome in 410. The Eternal City was burned and sacked for the first time in 800 years. By signing the peace, the Visigoths gained land in Aquitaine, creating the first barbarian kingdom inside Rome. In 413, the Burgundians were recognized by Emperor Honorius as federates and received lands on the left bank of the Rhine. In 429, the Vandals and Alans, pressed by the Visigoths, left Iberia and moved to North Africa. By 435, the Vandals had established dominion over a significant part of North Africa, depriving Rome of grain supplies. In 435, peace was concluded, and the Vandals and Alans were granted the status of federates. But in 439, the Vandals broke the treaty and captured Carthage. At the same time, the Huns, who had settled in what is now Hungary, began a campaign against the Eastern Empire in the 440s. Theodosius II agreed to a humiliating peace, pledging to pay tons of gold each year. In 451, the Huns, led by Attila, invaded the western part of the empire, Gaul. The Romans, together with the Visigoths and Franks, managed to assemble an army of 100,000 and took up a defensive position on the Catalonian hills. The battle ended in a draw, or rather a partial victory for the Roman Gothic coalition. Attila was forced to retreat, although the Hun army was not completely defeated. This was the last great victory for which Rome gave its last strength. The Romans would never again be able to assemble such an army. In 452, Attila invaded again, but this time in Italy. He ravaged the north of the country, Aquileia, Milan, Verona, Mantua, but he did not come close to Rome itself. The Huns stopped for various reasons: epidemics and famine in Italy, exhaustion of the army, the Eastern Empire attacked the Hunnic lands on the Danube, and a diplomatic mission by Pope Leo I, who personally met with Attila and, according to legend, convinced him to retreat. A year later, Attila died under mysterious circumstances, and his state collapsed. But this did not help Rome. In the south, after the death of Emperor Valentine III in 455, the Vandal leader Gaiseric considered the previous agreements with Rome to be invalid. He captured Sicily, Corsica, Sardinia, and invaded Rome. The city was destroyed. Its political and economic significance would be irretrievably lost, and its population would shrink to 100,000. It's important to realize that the barbarians didn't want the empire to collapse. They wanted to be incorporated into it. Barbarian leaders, seeing the endless wars within the country for power, only began to copy the behavior of the Romans. They revolted, demanding lands and official titles, and supporting various pretenders to the throne in endless internal wars. In 475, in another war for the throne, Flavius Orestes expelled the Emperor Julius Nepotus and elevated his son Romulus Augustulus to emperor. Ostrogoths, which made the basic part of army Flavius, in gratitude have demanded lands in Italy, but have received refusal. Odoacer, the leader of Ostrogoths, has raised revolt, has beaten Flavius, and has removed his son Romulus Augustulus from an imperial throne. This was the last emperor of Rome. The imperial symbols of power were sent to Constantinople, and the kingdom of Odoacer was founded in Italy. The Western Roman Empire ceased to exist.